start off the program with the news, which will be followed by our Thursday current affairs.
If the main agenda is the preservation of human history and culture, on the one hand is the display of human diversity, how humans have expressed throughout recorded time and is all accessible to the general public today. On the other, cultures with a missing piece in their history that is very much needed to further their heritage. Who is best to tell the story? Just who rightfully owns the thousands of artifacts on public display all across Europe?
The K. Brownlee Museum in Paris holds some 70,000 African artifacts, while London's British Museum has tens of thousands more.
So the significance of these items really relates to their iconic status that underline the significance of African art.
How did what should have just been a simple facilitated handover become a war of the arts?
In particular, they're worried about the fate of looted items in the hands of private collectors.
Many campaigns exist today, headed by governments across the world for the safe return of their looted artworks. In the way, however, are things like the British Museum Act of 1963, which prohibits the British Museum and the National History Museum from disposing of their holdings.
So I put it down to denial, really, and I think it's been chipped away at by sort of academics and activists and writers and intellectuals over the years. And in the last 20 years, what was once a fringe view is now, as I say, is really right in the center. It doesn't mean to say that everyone subscribes to it. Of course, there's still many people, unfortunately, who are still in denial, but it can't really be avoided anymore.
The museum themselves claim that the artifacts belong right there, on display for the world to visit, and they regularly and openly work with indigenous cultures facilitating access to these pieces.
We don't restitute, but we are absolutely committed to lending as widely as possible, including to Nigeria. The museum's foundational value resides in its breadth, scale, complexity, and unity, and as such is a true library of the world.
When in question were the Benin bronze artifacts the Nigerian government were trying to retain. And their meaning of facilitating is lending or loaning these artifacts.
Now, it's been more than a century since treasures were looted by British soldiers from Ghana. Many of them hold huge cultural and spiritual significance. Now, in a landmark agreement, the Victoria and Albert and British Museums in London are returning them on loan to the Ashanti King.
So the how, the when, and the how long is still solely up to the museum. The major problem that the world is now slowly waking up to is how Europe's institutions of art have still colonized most of the world's heritage and culture.
The metaphor is, someone comes into your home and steals something from your house, keeps it in their house, and then, X amount of years later comes and says, I'm going to lend you your thing back. It doesn't make any sense. And so in that way, I think it's going to be deeply problematic for a lot of people.
The sculptures from Greece, the Rosetta Stone, the Easter Island statue, millions flock European museum corridors to witness these priceless artifacts and, sadly, many from where these artifacts originate.
The V&A insists this is not restitution by the back door. A loan is not a model the Nigerians would accept for the return of the Benin bronzes, nor the Greeks over the Parthenon sculptures. But with British law as it stands, for the Asantehene, this deal is the best way to bring the gold home for now.
Today, we can say the wheel has started turning, and there just might be a lifeline to suggest that the pressure bestowed upon European governments is shedding some light.
In Paris, President Emmanuel Macron led a ceremony to return a set of 26 pieces of artifacts stolen from France's former colony, Benin, in 1892.
We're all thrilled at seeing this day arrive, when the bronze is finally returning home. But we're also painfully aware of having deprived its rightful owners for so long of its presence, and we offer our heartfelt apologies for this historic wrong.
La France ne pouvait pas rester passive. France had to act given the fact that 95% of the African material heritage is said to be outside of Africa. All young people need to take possession of their history to better build their future. There was no reason to condemn the African youth to be denied access to its own history.
So who should tell the story? Those who claim the artifacts as their rightful heritage have a gap in their history. It becomes difficult to impart culture and ancient knowledge into the next generation when there is no history to show. Lizega J. Mkhize for Under the Sun.